saw a very interesting post, but it was by a Israeli English-speaking commentator, and he said that after the war he read an article whereby some very prominent Jewish intellectuals said that he lamented the fact that he did not keep tabs, so to speak, on the righteous Gentiles, as he called them, who actually did persevere and try to help the Jews in such a dark time. The story is mostly about how the non-Jewish world turned its back and committed one of the greatest atrocities in history. But there were righteous Gentiles. We know who they are. Probably the most famous, Raoul Wallenberg. But there were famous righteous Gentiles, and they are memorialized beautifully and properly, appropriately at Yad Vashem in Israel. And he wished he would have taken more of an accounting and gone more out of his way to meet their families and to give them proper thanks for being shining examples of what humanity can be. And so after this commentator posted that, he said, and now, before it's too late, I will now list in my mind, please fill in the blanks, a number of those righteous Gentiles who are standing up for Israel now. And he listed some of the bigger names, Douglas Murray, a whole very impressive list of names. And it got me thinking, like, here we have Gentiles who are really going against the grain, becoming deeply unpopular because of their very outspokenness on behalf of Israel and the Jewish people. And there's an interesting corollary to this, because in this week's Torah portion, there is a mitzvah, there is a command of Kiddush Hashem, of sanctifying God's name. And the verse is very specific and very important. And the mitzvah is stated in this. The mitzvah is stated in two ways, both in a positive, but in the following way as well. And I want to focus on the second way, which is in this week's Torah portion. The verse goes, "V'nikdashti betoch b'nei Yisrael." The Almighty says, "And I will become sanctified amongst the Jewish people." And the word "v'nikdashti" is passive. I will become sanctified. That it will happen naturally, organically. One of the commentaries say, how does this happen? The Almighty is sanctified passively when sometimes you're just passive. You can sanctify God's name. The lesson here is when you just sit back and don't react. When you sit back and don't say the thing that you really want to say, but will hurt someone. When you sit in your chair and you don't stand up and start shouting and fighting and arguing, when every bone in your body and your whole mind is ablaze telling you to get up and do that. But when you sit back and when you're passive in a healthy way that has God at the forefront and won't come at the expense of hurting someone, those are the two litmus tests. Then you've sanctified God's name. Obviously, the inverse is true as well, that there are times when you must or obligated to stand out of your chair and start fighting and arguing. But there is a time when you can be passive. So, Kiddush Hashem can come in many forms and many ways. Sanctifying God's name and bringing His name down to the world can come about through Douglas Murray's writings, his speeches, as a non-Jew. But as a Jew, it can come like that, but it can also come by withholding yourself, by restraining yourself. And that's equally as important and equally as great of a sanctification in God's eye as the other, louder, more glorious, perhaps more glamorous type of sanctifying God's name. The big speech, the fiery, oratorical writing, both are valid. That's the secret, and that's what Judaism is telling us by using the passive term of V'nikdashti in this week's Torah portion. Amazing lesson. Either way you slice it, we should all be successful in sanctifying God's name, whether it needs to be in the proactive fashion or in the passive fashion. And both are equally needed in this very, very difficult times for the Jewish people. May there be peace soon in the land of Israel. But Karov, we should see their hostages and soldiers return safely and happily to the loving embrace of their families. Shabbat Shalom.